So now it's my pleasure to introduce John King, who's the president and CEO of the Education Trust and former U.S. Secretary of Education, who's going to share some opening remarks. Thank you so much for taking the time to connect with us today, Secretary King.
Thanks so much, AJ, and I'm thrilled to be a part of this conversation. Look, as we reflect on this past year, we have to acknowledge as a country that despite heroic efforts by principals and teachers, this has been a really challenging experience for kids and families. And disproportionately, that has been true for low-income students and students of color. Low-income communities of color have experienced a disproportionate impact of the health consequences of COVID, the economic consequences of COVID, and the education experience of the last year has been an equity disaster. We know that many students who were shifted to online or hybrid learning because of valid public health reasons didn't have the tools they needed. Too many students didn't have reliable internet access. Too many students didn't have access to devices. We know that these were pre-existing inequities. We had a digital divide before COVID, but now that digital divide has meant students not even able to log in to school or participate regularly in their classes. We know that families were differently positioned in how much support they could provide to their children around learning at home. Only about 1 in 5 African Americans in the workforce can work from home. Only about 1 in 6 Latinos in the workforce can work from home. Many kids were with an older sibling or home on their own. Many kids had to work during this period because of the economic crisis. So all of those challenges, plus districts not necessarily having the resources to support their teachers around professional development and technology tools, all of that has meant real challenges for students. McKinsey projects as much as 6 to 12 months of lost learning in mathematics, particularly for students of color. We've seen very high rates of chronic absenteeism in Boston. A recent report showed that 40% of 11th and 12th graders were chronically absent. In Montgomery County, Maryland, where I live, we see in the grades that students are getting. We had a 6-fold increase in failure rates in freshman English in our district. So these challenges are real, but there is a solution. And the solution is to address kids' academic and socio-emotional needs, to respond with what the evidence tells us works. High dosage tutoring or targeted intensive tutoring has a long evidence base. When you have tutors matched to students with proper training and support, they can help students make rapid progress. Expanded learning time, providing kids who have fallen behind with more time in the summer and after school, we know can make a difference if it's high quality, if the educators who are working with students are well trained and well supported. And we know that relationships have to be centered. I was a kid when I was a kid in New York City public schools, I lost both my parents. My mom when I was 8, my dad when I was 12. The thing that saved me was positive relationships with wonderful New York City public school teachers and great learning experiences at school that allowed me to be a kid when I couldn't be a kid at home. I'm excited about the conversation today because Saga is doing exactly what we know works and what the evidence tells us will work, providing that intensive targeted tutoring in the context of strong positive mentoring relationships. And we're going to hear more about that today as we hear about this research, which is showing that we can actually help students make very rapid progress, help students catch up, avoid the risk of a lost generation of students because of the impact of COVID-19.